Tonight, I want to talk about a very strange kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being physically alone. Not the loneliness of having nobody to call. Not even the loneliness that comes after heartbreak. I want to talk about the loneliness you feel in the presence of other people. The kind that appears in crowded rooms, at dinners, at parties, at family gatherings, in friend groups, in relationships. The kind of loneliness that makes you look around and quietly wonder, why do I still feel alone even now? Why do I feel disconnected when I am literally surrounded by people? Why does nothing feel fully real? Terence McKenna had a way of looking at modern life that was both unsettling and strangely liberating. One of his most memorable ideas was simple. Culture is not your friend. And maybe that sentence explains more about modern loneliness than people realize. Because maybe your loneliness is not just personal. Maybe it is not just a flaw in your personality. Maybe it is not because you're too quiet, too sensitive, too strange, too distant, or too broken. Maybe you feel lonely around people because modern culture has trained everyone to perform connection without actually living it. Maybe what you're feeling is not failure. Maybe it is the pain of seeing through something. Because culture teaches people how to behave, how to appear normal, how to sound acceptable, how to suppress what is too intense, too honest, too emotional, too deep, too alive. It teaches masks. It teaches scripts. It teaches timing. It teaches self-presentation. But it does not teach presence. It does not teach intimacy. It does not teach how to sit with another human being without a role, without a defense, without a performance. And so what happens? People learn how to socialize, but they do not learn how to connect. They learn how to be liked, but not how to be known. They learn how to stay included, but not how to be real. And that is why you can sit in a room full of people and feel something deeply unsettling. You can feel that everyone is there, but nobody is truly present. Everyone is speaking, but very little is being said. Everyone is visible, but almost nobody is revealed. That kind of loneliness is brutal, because it does not come from absence. It comes from surface. It comes from being surrounded by interactions that never reach the soul. And maybe you know this feeling very well. Maybe you have laughed in rooms where you felt empty. Maybe you have had conversations that sounded normal on the outside, while something inside you slowly withdrew. Maybe you have looked at other people and thought, why does this all feel so thin? Why do I feel like I am acting? Why do they feel like they are acting too? McKenna believed culture has a domesticated quality. It rewards obedience. It rewards repetition. It rewards imitation. It wants you manageable, predictable, legible. It gives you identities ready-made. It tells you what success looks like, what attractiveness looks like, what masculinity looks like, what femininity looks like, what intelligence looks like, what happiness looks like. And once you internalize all of that, you start entering human relationships through these prefabricated patterns. You do not meet people as a living mystery. You meet them through categories, through expectations, through personas, through fear. And they meet you the same way. So instead of contact, there is negotiation. Instead of truth, there is strategy. Instead of connection, there is mutual performance. And then people wonder why modern life feels so lonely. But how could it not? How could people feel deeply connected when most of them are terrified of being seen? Without their costume, real connection requires risk. It requires the possibility of rejection. It requires honesty before certainty. It requires saying something true before you know how it will be received. Culture does not usually reward that. Culture rewards polish. It rewards signals. It rewards branding. Even ordinary people now carry themselves like public relations departments for their own personality, curating what they reveal, managing their image, editing their thoughts in real time, trying to remain desirable, acceptable, non-threatening. And when everybody is doing that, loneliness becomes inevitable. Because the self that is being presented is not the self that is longing. The real self remains hidden. And what is hidden cannot truly be loved. That is one of the most painful truths in life. If you only show people your mask, then your mask may receive attention, approval, attraction, maybe even admiration, but your deeper self will remain untouched. And untouched parts of the soul do not feel connected. They feel abandoned. So sometimes the loneliness you feel around people is not irrational at all. It is accurate. It is the emotional recognition that what is happening is not intimacy. It is proximity without depth. It is sociality without communion. It is contact without revelation. And there is another layer to this. Sometimes the loneliest people in social settings are not the coldest people. They are the ones who can feel the gap, the ones who can sense how much is being avoided, the ones who notice how rare sincerity really is, the ones who crave something beyond small talk, beyond image, beyond social ritual. These people often think something is wrong with them, but maybe what is wrong is that they are asking life for something more real than the culture around them knows how to provide. And that creates a painful tension. Because on one hand, you still want human connection. You still want warmth. You still want recognition. You still want that miraculous feeling of being understood. But on the other hand, you become exhausted by environments built on performance. You become tired of pretending shallow interaction is enough. You become tired of talking without saying anything. Tired of being around people who only know how to relate through role, status, gossip, irony, distraction, convenience. And eventually, solitude starts to feel cleaner. Not always happier, but cleaner. At least when you're alone, the emptiness is honest. There is something almost unbearable about false connection, because it gives the appearance of nourishment while leaving the soul starving. McKenna often pointed people away from passive participation in culture and toward direct experience, toward inner life, toward the mysterious, toward the raw encounter with being. And whether or not you agree with all of his ideas, there is something powerful in that direction. Because the opposite of cultural loneliness is not more social performance, it is reality. Real speech, real thought, real vulnerability, real friendship,
Real love.
real presence. This is why some of the most meaningful moments in life do not feel impressive from the outside. A late-night conversation, a walk with somebody who is not trying to impress you, a silence that does not feel awkward, a message that says exactly what it means, a person who speaks from the center of themselves instead of from a rehearsed identity. These moments feel rare because they are rare, and when they happen, you feel it immediately. Your nervous system feels it, your body relaxes, your mind stops defending itself, because for a moment there is no performance to decode. Just reality. And reality is nourishing in a way culture often is not. So what do you do with this loneliness? First, you stop treating it like simple weakness. You stop assuming it means you're socially defective. Sometimes loneliness around people is a sign that your psyche is rejecting the artificial. Second, you become more careful about the environments you normalize. Not every room deserves your openness. Not every group deserves your energy. Not every connection deserves to be called connection. Third, you become more honest yourself. Because if you want something real, you have to become real enough to invite it. That does not mean saying everything to everyone. It means refusing to disappear inside performance. Refusing to betray your own depth just to remain socially convenient. And finally, you stop fearing solitude so much. Because solitude is where you recover your own signal. It is where the noise of culture becomes quieter. It is where you begin to hear your actual thoughts again, your actual desires, your actual grief, your actual soul. And paradoxically, the people who learn how to be alone honestly are often the only ones capable of truly meeting others, because they are no longer desperate for distraction, no longer begging for validation, no longer using people as anesthesia. They can finally see another human being clearly. Maybe that is the real issue. Maybe you feel lonely around people because too much of modern social life is built to distract people from themselves, not to bring them into contact with one another. Maybe culture gave you 1,000 forms of communication, but almost no path to communion. Maybe your loneliness is the quiet intelligence of the soul refusing imitation, refusing surface, refusing to call performance love, and maybe that is not the beginning of your failure. Maybe it is the beginning of your awakening, because once you see that culture is not your friend, you can stop asking it to tell you what connection is. You can stop letting the crowd define intimacy. You can stop measuring your life by how included you look. And you can begin the harder, stranger, more beautiful task of finding what is real. Not what is popular, not what is approved, not what is legible, what is real. And sometimes the path toward real connection begins with a painful realization. You were never lonely because there were no people. You were lonely because there was no truth.
Nevermore. Unquote.